So when we left off on chapter 41, Moon was in prison, or he's in jail, and the inmates are giving him a hard time, asking if he wants dog, cobbler, asking him if he's had any dog recently, and they're like cursing at him. And jail and prison, that's not really a good place. I mean, for anybody, but let alone a 10-year-old kid that's never lived in any places before other than outside, with the exception of Hal's place. So Mr. Wellington's going to help him out. He's got a case to build. Moon, every day, Moon's asking the sheriff or the deputy or whoever's holding him at the jail, like, hey, did you hear from Mr. Wellington? Did you hear from Mr. Wellington? The guy's like, no, man, I haven't heard from him. He's like, normally lawyers only come around if you got a bunch of money. And Moon's like, well, I don't got any money. And he's like, yeah, you're probably not going to see your lawyer anytime soon. Now, you guys in the real world probably have at least a better understanding of how this works. How long do you think it would be before Moon has to go to trial and Mr. Wellington's going to spend all his time doing the research? Like, are we talking hours, days, months, years? What do you think?
Years, because you got to be 18 to even go to jail.
Yes, that's accurate. You got to be 18 to go to jail. But Moon's being held regardless, and Moon's waiting. How long is he probably going to have to wait for Mr. Wellington to make his case? How long does that take?
2 months.
Couple months? I mean, more than a day or two, right?
Yeah.
Even a week would be really quick. He's got to go do some investigating. He's got to present his case. He's got to probably talk to other lawyers and judges and people. I don't know. Like, he's got I would imagine, a decent amount of work to do. But Moon's like, hey, where's Mr. Wellington? Like, he's expecting him to be there like this because Moon doesn't know much about the world outside of the forest. So chapter 42 is where we left off. Moon feels like jail's the best place for him because he doesn't have anywhere else to go. So he's just kind of reserved to the fact that that's where he's going to be. Chapter 42. The next morning I was on my back staring at the ceiling when the hall door was suddenly kicked in and slammed against the wall. Hey! One of the irritated prisoners yelled. I looked over at the doorway and saw Sanders standing there, his eyes searching each of the jail cages. His face was so swollen with oily poison ivy blisters that he squinted like the sun was in his eyes. His ears, ripped from briars, had orange medicine painted on them that made him look like he wore earmuffs. His hands trembled at his sides. I might not have recognized him had I not been expecting him. Eventually, his eyes came around to my bed and rested on me. He didn't say a word, but he walked over to the bars of my cage and he stood there. I sat up and stared at him. You got lost out there again, didn't you? I said. I watched his jaw tighten until I was sure his teeth would shatter. Even through the swollen face, I could see veins popping out on his forehead. He swallowed and said calmly, come here, kid. I want to tell you something. I shook my head. You'll pop me across the face like you did that other fellow. Come here. No. You want me to get the keys and come in there? Go get what you want. Sanders looked around. He saw the other prisoners watching him. He spit a brown gob of tobacco juice between the bars of my cage. Damn it, kid, he hissed. I said get over here. I said no. You come in here if you want. Sanders clutched the bars tightly. Come here, he yelled. I shook my head. Hey, one of the prisoners yelled. Why don't you keep it down? You crazy or what? Sanders pointed at him and spoke through clenched teeth. You better keep your mouth shut if you know what's good for you. The prisoner chuckled. Mister, you ain't got no authority in here. You're just a constable. Sanders took a step in the prisoner's direction. Don't you? Officer Pete came through the door and looked around. Hey, what's going on in here? Sanders stopped and I saw his sides bulging in and out with heavy breathing. Mr. Sanders, I think it's time for you to leave, Officer Pete said. Yeah, get out of here, you idiot, someone yelled. Sanders turned and looked at me. Let me in there with him. I need to discuss some things with that boy. Officer Pete shook his head and grabbed for Sanders' arms. I don't think Sanders jerked his arm away. Don't you handle me, he snarled. Officer Pete straightened and stared at Sanders. Let's go, now. After Sanders was led away, the prisoners began asking me questions. Man, who the hell was that kid? Sanders, I said. I've seen him on television, another prisoner said. He's the one that kid shot at. Ain't that right, kid? I didn't shoot nobody. I said, tired of saying it. Well, he don't act like it. He's always been mad at me. He's just extra mad because he caught poison ivy out there. I think that man's gone crazy, the prisoner next to me said. I shrugged. Man, you're lucky you're in this jail cell. There's nothing lucky about me, I said. A policeman I didn't know brought me breakfast. I managed to eat some of it and lay back down to see if I could sleep. By lunchtime, I was still staring at the ceiling. I was so tired that I felt sick, but sleep wouldn't come. When the new policeman brought lunch, I didn't even get up for it. I let it lie on the floor until he came and picked it up again. Officer Pete brought supper around 5 o'clock. I asked him again if he had heard anything about what they were going to do to me. He got irritated with me as he moved to the next cage. Look, kid, I told you I don't know nothing. I'm not news service for prisoners, but I've been here since yesterday. Yeah, and you've been a pain in the butt, too. We almost had to handcuff that crazy fellow from Sumter County. But Mr. Wellington said he was going to help. He turned and looked at me. Consider yourself lucky. Some of these people have been in here a month. I lay back down on my cot. Officer Pete came back. Are you going to eat anything? He ain't had nothing all day except a bite or two of breakfast, somebody said. I'm not hungry, I said. Officer Pete picked up the supper tray. Suit yourself. Chapter 43, we will read mañana.